Welcome to Hubcast Aidalon, the podcast where two friends take an excellent adventure into the world of Hubworld Aidalon.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Hubcast Aidalon. I'm Alan Jones.
And I'm Steven.
And we're super happy to have you guys back. Today we're going to talk about the lore. So this will probably end up being one of our shorter ones. There's not a lot of lore to the game that we do know, but there's a lot that we can garner through card art that we've seen and whatnot. So, obviously this takes place in a future where space travel and multiple planets are colonized. So automatically we got that much just by the basis of what you're doing. What we know is that, you know, at the time, because you had to travel with starships, long distances between planets, certain planets that were like docks or like, you know, flyaway cities as they call, you know, like hub cities, like Atlanta and Chicago and LA and New York, you know, where a lot of travel comes in and out of in America, for instance. Those existing in a planetary scale for spaceships to be able to refuel, dock, repair, and move on their ways were super important. And those were called hub worlds. At this point in the lore, as far as where to understand from what they told us in the game, a new faction came along and they came on the scene with like teleportation technology, like transport technology, where you could not only just teleport long distances instantly, maybe portals, I don't know, like Rick and Morty or something like that, but some kind of like instantaneous movement of items from one place to another. Teleportation portal, I'm not sure exactly what, but that then takes interstellar space travel and makes it kind of obsolete. Mm-hmm. So now all these hub worlds that were like once like the hubs and busy centers of the universe, where a lot of money kind of influxed and outfluxed, are kind of made a little bit obsolete. And for this particular hub world, Aidalon, where we're starting the journey for this first set. And so you have 4 different factions. You have the blue faction, which represent those guys that brought the portal teleportation technology into the mix, and they kind of run things now because of the fact that they're the guys with the technology that everyone uses. They dictate the terms. All of very cyberpunk realities where corporations are the ones running things and not a political governmental system. In the sense that, you know, you still have governmental systems, but they're ran by corporations and not by, you know, individuals doing politics and stuff like that, as we normally would consider right now in history. And so that's the blue faction that you could play, represent them in lore. Then you have the orange faction, which represent like your union workers, like your steel workers, your mill workers, your space shipbuilders, your robot repairers, like all the tradesmen and guildsmen of this future society are all represented under orange. The doers, the people working them blue collar jobs, telling you can take this job and shove it. Yeah, so, so they're represented by the orange. Then you have the green color faction, which represents the old money. The bougie old money that doesn't like all those new rich coming in. They prefer the days of antebellum universe where you could drink your mint julep and watch the sunrise over a spaceship. I don't know. Old money. And then finally you have your purple faction, which represent the underworld, the underbelly of the hub world, like your people that are anarchists, that are fight the system, fight the government, also people that just don't buy into what the government's doing. Not necessarily criminals, maybe, but rebels of some sort. So it doesn't necessarily mean just criminals, but the forgotten people, the people that are on the dregs, the outskirts, whether they be freedom fighters, whether they be cartel members, whether they be orphans and munchkins, I don't know. So yeah. The society's forgotten, and that's the purple faction. And so I'll turn this over to Steven here. I'm going to give him first crack at his thoughts on the lore and the factions, and he'll of course, and as I will too, go into like how they represent themselves in cards. But we're not going to try to talk too mechanically about that. That'll be for the deck building episode, which will be our next episode. But it's impossible not to talk about the lore without seeing what we saw on the cards, on top of like how we've seen they play, which inevitably how a faction plays builds into the lore of it. Like for instance, in Magic, white plays life gain, so you see a lot of time priests and holy characters are white in Magic. Black plays like killing dudes and whatnot, so you see rats and zombies very often in black. So, lore is dictated by what the cards are doing to a degree too. So we can't help but mention some of it, but we'll try to keep the majority of it for the next episode. So take us away, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have to say I'm very fond of the green, folk, the folk that want to, kind of keep things where they were, where they are. I think they play very, interestingly compared to,
I just thought make America green again.
Make America green. I like that. That's good. Money on my mind, but I think it's a great, they're cool looking, group. And also the blue faction. I think, them being the kind of on the front lines, the leaders kind of taking over, more like your police, your militia group, but also again your more advanced technologically group. I think mechanically they because they have this advancement, they can kind of see things ahead of time. They can also maybe plan ahead a little bit, and there's definitely some cards in that faction that do that. And then your green, I really like how the green faction plays more so with abundance, the resources, whether that's gaining more shards, gaining more cards, sometimes even at the expense of your own turn during a gameplay. But I really like how again, it's green's about abundance, blue's about kind of see things ahead of time, and maybe there's some shiftiness going on, but for the most part it's I like those mechanics. But I have to give credit where credit's due. Orange is so good at being shifty, and I think that's that's just going to be like the common thing you'll see out of orange is you're just going to see cards moving around on your grid pass, and you're going to see a lot of just shiftiness. It's like it's getting shifty, so it's just a very interesting faction to be a part of. But I also think that speaks to kind of like those workers, those blue collar workers, or the union workers that they're just trying to get by, but they're trying to have honest work, and they're just like the common folk that are trying to exist in this new era or this new world. And the purple faction, I think they're interesting. I think there's more mystery to them than we really know about, but they can be maybe more aggro, more dangerous in their own right. There's more of a it seems to be sacrifice to get what you want ahead of time, but I think they play very strategically. But I like that kind of goes to that kind of underworld aspect of it, where hey, maybe there's some shady dealings going on, but hey, anything to get the cash or get the whatever they're after. And I think that kind of plays into a lot of how that society works as a whole, right? Everyone kind of has their parts and places that exist, and there's I think it plays into maybe real world events, but also as kind of there's that world that's built, and again we get a glimpse of it throughout each card, and again too that they're not just humans. We've got other characters involved. We've got the lizard folk. In prior episodes you may have seen some cards where they're either humanoid or or of some other different species. To be fair, I think like some of the first common cards are like the humanoid lizard people. I also like some people that are just like blue. I think that's
Roaring Bug.
and I also like, again, the cyberpunk-esque ness of it all. Essentially, right? Everything's just advancing into the future. And again, it's dystopia. You can see like the dystopian aspects of it, where again, I think it just leads to more intrigue, and I am hopefully, maybe more future sets, or maybe like when they actually release the full card set, we're able to see more lore dropped in each card that's presented. But very intriguing. I think a very good set to kind of lay out for us to see like where this is going to take us next in future sets.
So to go over, in case any of our audience is not familiar with cyberpunk, good examples of it in media as far as movies and TV shows. Firefly was a good one. It was not so much cyberpunk. There was a lot of more like a Western feel to it, but it had a lot of those elements where corporations are running things. People are told how to live, drink, breathe, everything. And if you don't like that, then the government's going to come for you. It's a very cyberpunking theme that you'll see over and over again. The movie Blade Runner and the sequel that came out recently, Blade Runner, some year that I can't remember off the top of my head, 2055 or something like that, was another example of cyberpunk. To a degree, The Matrix was cyberpunk in the sense of like a lot of the aesthetics and feels of like technology and being able to immerse yourself in other realities that exist outside the reality you're in. Like being able to travel the internet, like as a person living in it, like in The Matrix are very cyberpunk themes that you'll find very often or not. Shadowrun is a tabletop RPG that plays in the cyberpunk world. Cyberpunk 2070, was it 2077?
Yep.
That was obviously, as the name suggests, a cyberpunk video game starring our nation's greatest treasure, Keanu Reeves. And so, there's lots of different representations of it. The main things to take onto it is corporations rule everything. So, Demolition Man was another example. Taco Bell was one of the major owners of the world because it had won the fast food wars in that movie. That's a prime example of how corporations, through wheeling and dealing and buying the right people off, now control the world as if they were a governmental power in and of themselves, even though at the end of the day, they're a corporation trying to make money. They're making money, but also ruling your daily life. So they can say Taco Bell is a requirement for lunch or you get beheaded. They can do whatever they want. Corporations control, and there's this like conglomeration of different corporations that have piecemealed the world off between each other to rule like their gangster territories or mafiosos. And because of that, people live a very stark life where they're inundated with a lot of like advertisements and whatnot. Reality around them is constantly push them to consume because corporations rule everything and they want you spending money. On top of that, everything's kind of dictated down to like the minute. You have to work to get your Slurpee, food goop that you can eat, and that's what you get. Oh, Fifth Element's another good example of kind of cyberpunky and like, everything is not the best and you're pretty much dictated down to the minute how you're going to live, and everything is hyper policed. And because, when these all take place in the future, cyberpunk very often assumes that overpopulation is a thing. So you notice in all these cities that everything's built like 100, 2,000 stories high. And the nice people and the rich people and the well-to-do people live in the high rises, and the people that can barely afford to live what would be the projects are floors 1 to 10, on the base floor with all the smog and pollution, and life is just terrible for them, but it's okay because you don't have to go that far down if you don't want to associate with poor people. So, that's something. So all that being the case, my thoughts on this and why I wanted to go second, because I want to influence Steven on this one. This seems to have a lot more positive spin on it from you looking at the cards. It's not like bleak, like we're like in like universes like Warhammer 40k. It's like life is terrible. It's so miserable. Everyone's terrible and life sucks. This seems really positive. So I would call this Ghibli cyberpunk, where it's a cyberpunk reality, but there's like this hopeful spin to it, like a Ghibli movie. You may be dealing with these dark subjects or these horrible subjects, a la like a Princess Mononoke or like an Arrietty or something like that, where there's hard times and negativity, or even my neighbor Totoro, where they're dealing with hard subject matter like the sickness of loved ones or the reality being less than optimal or whatever. But there's yet this loving, optimistic hopefulness that resonates even through these dark moments in his movies. It seems like in the card artwork, in the way things are going, you know, that's what like I get. Like, it's a cyberpunk reality and things aren't perfect. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying that. But it just feels like there's this like cautious optimism that's happening in the artwork. And I like it, so I'm going to call it Ghibli punk. That's how I'm going to term it.
No, I definitely see, like, just to be in agreement with you, like, it's a very good, I think, fallout, and even to the art. I think we see a lot of negative, things about the future, and I think it kind of holds like a very, like you said, a cautiously optimistic outlook, and you can see it in the artwork. It's
like even the people
bright.
that are remnants, they might at moments in the card artwork, like in the purple faction, the dregs of society, there's still moments where you see them smiling or doing things. Like, you don't see that usually in cyberpunk. No one really ever has a smile in a cyberpunk movie. Everyone's like, this sucks.
Yeah.
Life
is bleak. Yeah.
Unless you're the guy that they come into that's living in the 1% of a cyberpunk reality, but they're always going to be happy because you're in a 1%er in the most bleak reality, which means you probably have so much wealth you don't even have to worry about unhappiness. So outside of that one scenario, most your average people don't look very happy to be in the reality they're in. And yet you'll see that in these where like you'll see kids like happy because they want to go to like they're going to food, or you see like people like, happy in their moments. So, I really, like that about this. That I would say like, going into it, the factions now, you see like, base thing of mechanics is they seem to like to want to mess with the archives, and I won't go any further into that. But that, like Steven was saying, seems to show that they're about gaining information and putting it away for future use. They're constantly, working and manipulating things and putting it in their own neat little places so they can use it when the time is right. Like any kind of like policing or information service would. Just because you have the dossiers and know exactly what this criminal organization is doing to the letter 24/7, 365, you don't just act on it. You wait to, I need you now to go do this thing so we can get this intelligence operation off. Guess what? You're now my informant. Or they turn the screws. They use the information to their advantage. They just don't blindly go and just... Their job is not to be the justice force, even though they are technically the policing agency. It's more of like what you would expect from like the CIA or whatnot. They're collecting information, getting their dossiers in order, and using that information as a network to gain the max benefit. So that's what lore-wise I see Blue is doing, and it represents itself in manipulation of archive. The Orange faction, like we said before with Steven, they like to shift cards around. And I don't consider that so much as being shifty. because they're the union workers and the guild workers and whatnot, I consider that they're the ones building the infrastructure. So like, oh no, we got to move this over here. So this, they're the ones like building all this infrastructure. So it's not so much shifting in the sense that they're being sneaky or whatnot. They're literally like setting things up to be maximally efficient. So, as someone that's had to work as a technician before in my line of work, sometimes you gotta go, okay, we got these 3 machines down. Okay, this machine needs to be moved over here, and we're gonna move these workers over here to do this work right now, and then we're gonna work over here, and that's out of operation now. And so shifting is more like you trying to get the machine working as much as you can and keep it balanced. So I feel like that's what they're kind of doing, is they're building the grid. And since they're the ones in charge of building things, they're making snap decisions on what happens with the guild. So they could be like, this is blueprinted to go here, but oh no, it needs to go over here now. So that's how I would say I view the orange faction. Green faction, definitely all about resources. Since they're the old money faction, they're going to have like the best sources. Because you know what old money does to keep themselves rich? They know who to use and how to use them for max benefit so they can make profit at the cost of everyone else. So I see them having the best source cards, the best sources, best minions out there making them money. Because rich people, old money rich people, they will work what they say is working hard. Air quotes on that, my opinion. They work, don't get me wrong, but they work in not the way that we work, whereas we have to work and sweat ourselves to the bone as a blue collar worker very often to make our paycheck. Their job is working to influence and manipulate situations and people into such a way that their profit continues. Their management, and green is management, and to be a proper manager, you have to have good employees that are doing the things to make you the money. And so I see sources and management of those sources as being like the huge green thing. In lore, that's what they're doing. They're managing people to keep them wealthy. And then finally in the purple, like you said, you saw like I saw it too, in cards that sacrifice things to get things. And that's not so much because they're bad people or anything like that, but you find when you are in the lower class, and in my opinion, even today, that everything has a cost. If you're trying to move yourself up, you're going to have to make sacrifices. Do you work those 2 jobs so your kids can have a better life? I mean, it's a common story. You're having to work 2 jobs and sacrifice your time and ability to have a free time and a life so your kids could have a better life than you did. And I'm not saying all their cards work in that same vision, just that because they're with less means, whether it's because they're working on the criminal side of things, or they're the forgotten few that, or the dregs of society. When you're in that kind of line of work or in that kind of caste or social position, you have to often make hard choices. I can't afford everything, so what goes to a late payment? What do I have to sacrifice to get done what I need to get done? And what am I willing to sacrifice to do that? It's not always the case. So, I think, it's a good representation in lore wise of just what you suffer in that position. So I think that's really interesting as well. So that being the case, I'll switch it back over to you, Stephen. What do you like, about, like, in lore wise, from what you've seen from the cards and what we've learned from the game, from the updates and the game found, thus far?
Yeah. So I think, like, with the updates, I think that, like, they do a really good job with the lore of kind of how, each faction is kind of making their play, in society, kind of what you touched on, like, we can either delve into our common, the commons, the archives, or the council. And in this case, each faction might have a different way of getting to their end goal. I think blue is very much in the archives of what they do, as well as sometimes their commons. And I think that's kind of like their way of, kind of having the upper hand, or, making it in this society. Whereas, you see green seems to be very heavy in commons, just getting, card draw and then shards to play the said cards. And then you also have more so, I think orange is more about play with what you're given, either
so the grid itself.
Yeah, out of the grid itself, and or your hand, to maybe prevent, anything from getting taken from you, because you have very limited, resources as it is, and you don't want those to be taken away or, maybe abused. So, I think orange plays really well with that. And then I think, purple, for the most part, is by any means necessary. If I have to lose something, you will too, eye for an eye. I'm going to, if someone's going to come after me, I'm going to come after them back, and or I'm going to be the first to have that initiative, to take from you before you take from me, by any means necessary. So I think that's, very telling in how, a lot of the mechanics of the cards play. And I love that it gives you that feeling, as you're looking over, the mechanics as well as the artwork. And again, there's still that, again, cautiously optimistic side. Like, I'm still rooting for purple faction, even if I really like green or I like blue, or even orange, right? I think, there's a common case, that can be made for all of them. Not to say one's right over the other, right? But, in how these factions operate within the lore of the story, from what we can tell so far, that is kind of what it's giving off to me. So I like that, throughout the any updates that are given, with the game going into production, I'm excited to see, more artwork and where, maybe, more of those mechanics are being laid out. And as we are, again, facing each other, right, in this 1v1, if it's just a 2-player game that's being had, right, I get to see kind of how, Alan is coming at me with his faction and vice versa, and how, again, maybe there's a strategy I can already think about, because I know the lore base of each faction, but also too, it kind of plays to maybe, to a strength and weakness, right? I know maybe some factions, if they're going up against each other, right, they may have their own pros and cons as they're playing. If I'm going up against an orange deck, versus maybe a blue deck, maybe that's not, a lore-wise accurate, maybe like the best solution. And again, I think there's going to be some upper-handedness. Whereas a deck that maybe is more aggro, like black, might not be great against, purple. I'm associating purple with magic, so black is purple in this case, for magic. But, I think purple, if I'm being super aggro, and I'm coming at somebody who has orange lore cards, then I'm going to be probably more shifty, and I'm probably going to get away with blocking said, approaches or onslaughts, to either delve into my council. And I think, again, that just plays to the very much with the orange aesthetic of I want to protect what I have. I want to keep it, close to my chest, and I don't want you taking what I have, what very limited things I own. So I think that's very, again, just telling in how the story is laid out. But again, that's kind of what I have, or kind of my thoughts on that. I just think it's very well done. And again, said in a prior episode, just a flawless game, and I think that really just tells to how, interconnected, and what themes are running through, this set. And again, I'm excited to see, again, what future cards, when they fully release the full set, where, what some of the artwork is, and what extra other mechanics are going to be, kind of in line with the lore.
Right. I think what I like the most about the lore is what I've already touched on, is the fact that they're choosing a really interesting route, which is the Ghibli punk, Ghibli, cyberpunk, because I feel like I'm getting to enjoy a new take on a trope. Cause, you do fantasy, you're expecting like orcs are dumb and strong and usually evil, and halflings are mischievous and like to steal and are very roguish, and elves are like pompous and artistic and, have, this intelligence to them. And, you get all these tropes that have already been well developed by multiple people, starting with Tolkien going on forward. And, or you're looking at low fantasy and you start drawing on the tropes of Game of Thrones. Or if you're looking at sci-fi, you either have a dystopian reality like 40K, or you have like 50s pulp, like, everything's like Star Trek, or like it's a optimistic view of the world in the future. Or you have kind of something in between, or like a Star Wars, where it's kind of grim, but it's also kind of nice, and it's kind of this weird kind of juxtaposition of the two. So like, when you come along with something that's like, we're gonna be this, and you're already kind of like, okay, well, I should expect X, Y, Z, and they're like, no, X, A, B. And you're like, oh, well, that's rather refreshing. So this kind of almost like optimistic, happy, cyberpunk, I really enjoy and love from a lore perspective of seeing where that's going to go and what's going to happen with that. Obviously, you still have a controlling interest. You have the blue faction, which is cracking down and telling you how to live and who to be and what to do. To some extent, we don't know the fullness, because again, we're not fully knowledgeable about the lore. We have the basic understanding of it, but be interesting to see, one, how optimistic this cyberpunk reality is, how bleak it is, how optimistic it is, where that line is ridden, how cracked down life is by this blue organization. Like, is it literally, you don't get any say or any freedom, or is it a half and half, like where that line is? And then I would say, kind of learning how bad off the hub worlds are. Cause yeah, now there's a new technology, but is it just like, is it like being in a telephone company, like the second the internet got started, or being in a cable company the second you had streaming and no one wanted cable TV anymore? I mean, yes, but declined severely. So much so that the companies are like, if you bundle TV with your internet, like cable internet, we'll give you this great deal, because that's the only way you can get cable, is if you're bundled with your internet at this point. So, are we in a decline? Is it bad off like that? Or is it just like super bad, like being in a telegraph company at this point? Because no one has telegraphs, that are very rare that telegraphs ever used. Oh, if it exists, I'm not sure. Maybe. But, how bad off are hub worlds in this new world of portal teleportation, whatever that is, technology? Like, I would love to learn that. Like the extent, like the full extent, like as we go through this, like how bad is it? Or, maybe some hub worlds are still doing good, some are doing bad. Is it unilateral, or is it depending on the hub world? Like, all these little bits of nuggets will be fun to learn, to kind of flesh out the world as a whole. I guess I would equate it to the first time I saw Avatar: The Last Airbender. You watch this and like, oh, this is a refreshing take on like, a story you haven't seen before of elements and like martial arts and whatnot. And then you like the initial, like, this is interesting and a refreshing take, but then the world starts getting developed. And you're like, oh, the Earth Nation, and oh, this is what the Fire Nation's like, and oh, crazy. There's two different like water nations. The South Water Nation is different from the North Water. Things like that. And you start seeing these little minor details, but those become ever presently important to you because they're parts of something you've never seen before. So every little detail becomes its own little like new like exploration or treasure you find. So I think seeing how the world building will develop is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. And again, looking for those nuances in each. So I'm very excited to see like the direction that it's going on. And especially like you said, are different, are hub worlds worse off than others, you know, which ones get, you know, wider, others becoming maybe better off and worse off than others. So it's definitely something to, I don't know, like you said, those little nuggets to look forward to, as the game progresses.
So this is the last of our first 4 videos. So hopefully we'll come back and record a couple more, have those prepped for the next couple months. We're going to talk about deck building and kind of gather our thoughts for the next episode on that. And then after that, our goal is to have an episode where we kind of go over how we want to teach new players and get them interested in how we think community building will occur and the community building as a whole. So the kind of episode talking about that. Goals past that. So that should be, like I said, these 4 are first 4. They'll all come out simultaneously. We'll meet up again and record for the month beyond that, and then the month beyond that. But we already have kind of a pre-plan for those 2 episodes. The goal beyond that is if this takes off and this is something people are wanting to be more involved with and want to see more from us, and it looks like this is something people have an interest in, you know, keeping going and want to see more from us, which if you guys do, thank you very much. We really would appreciate that. If not, we can take a hint. We're still going to play the game regardless if you want to hear us talk or not. That doesn't stop our love of the game and our support for the community that we'll have. So don't feel pressure one way or the other. But if this is something you guys want, episode 7, going forward, we'll try to announce in advance. So that way we can actually communicate with you guys, be watching like the, feed from like Discord or, whatnot. So that way, maybe do it like live. So that way we can record it live and, release it that way and kind of have a more communal response, like discussions and letting you guys give your feedback and communicating with you, kind of more communal, experience episode 7 and on, if this is something you guys want. But we figured we at least broke down the first 6 episodes we wanted to do and discuss the different aspects of the game as it exists right now. And, then, going beyond that, the goal was to open it up to be a more communal experience if this is something you guys want more of. So, again, let us know. Thank you very much for watching. We really appreciate it. And so, we hope this is something you guys want and hope to see more of you going forward in the future. So thank you guys.
Thanks for listening to Hubcast Aidalon. From everyone involved, we appreciate your continued support and wish you a great day and a wonderful week.